I've spent my entire life in the business of education. I jokingly say I started my career in kindergarten and I just never left the classroom. I've either been on one side of the desk or the other my entire life until recently. And throughout that time, most of my time was spent studying science. I majored in science in college, in biology and chemistry, and then I taught science for a couple decades, teaching biology, chemistry, physics, that sort of thing. Throughout that entire time, I had a great struggle as a Christian to try to make the two somehow make sense. I either had to deny one or deny the other, but in the end, it was science that proved God to me. It was as a scientist that I found God. So we're going to begin all these episodes by just kind of saying we always start with what is it we actually know. As a scientist, you need to show me something. What is it I can see and touch? What is it I know? And we spent the first episode kind of talking about that. What I know is that I know I'm here, I know I'm real, I know I'm filming a YouTube video. And there's things I haven't seen, like Australia. I know it's real. I've never been there, but I'm pretty sure it's real. And then you can go back in history. I'm sure the Civil War occurred. But once you get back about 3,000 years ago, about 1000 BC, it gets very fuzzy. There's not a lot known. When you get back 4,000 years ago, there's very little known. Just some stone tablets and some structures we've dug up. Anything beyond 4,000 years ago, we really don't know. So I want to start this episode and every episode with that idea that just kind of come back to what is it you know to be true. And then everything else, let's stay open-minded with. Well, this episode, we're going to talk about dinosaurs. This is a fascinating subject when it comes to Christianity because I remember working a long time ago, and my manager at the time was a Christian, and he kind of said, you know, I believe in the Bible, but what about dinosaurs? And I thought, that's a great question. Well, the reality is the Bible brings up dinosaurs. If you take a look at the book of Job, it's in chapter 39 and chapter 40. Job is the oldest book in the Bible. It's estimated that it is a little over 4,000 years old. Being the oldest book in the Bible, there's a lot that Job has seen as a very ancient man. He's somebody that walked the earth maybe 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, and he saw some things in the very beginning. He was the generation shortly after those first generations of Noah. He kind of was one of those first groups of people that really walked the earth and had some influence over the earth. And Job is also probably, and I've been putting this out there quite a bit, but I believe it's the oldest complete text on the planet. But Job brings up two animals in Job 39 and 40, when God has shown up to Job and his friends, and he's showing Job his creation, he brings up two animals, one being the largest animal he's ever produced, and the other being the most fierce animal that he has ever produced. And this all starts in Job 38, or Job 40, I apologize, so it's Job 40 and 41. So we're just going to, I'm not going to read through both these entire chapters, but the first animal we're going to talk about, I'm just going to make some points here, and then we're going to talk about that animal. What is that animal? Because these are animals Job has seen. These are things that he's laid eyes on, and God has given him this example because it's an example he's familiar with. So we're going to pick it up in Job 40, starting verse 15. Look now at the behemoth, which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. See now, his strength is in his hips, and his power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinew of his thighs are tightly knit. His bones are like beams of bronze. His ribs are like bars of iron. He is the first of the ways of God. Only he who made him can bring near his sword. So here God is showing him an animal and giving him an example of an animal that he created. And he's saying that this is the biggest animal that I've ever created, Job. He's got a tail like a cedar. Now, the other part of this, and I'm just going to jump to it real quick, and then we'll continue to talk about it. We'll go to verse 23. Indeed, the river may rage, yet he is not disturbed. He is confident, though the Jordan gushes into his mouth. So ultimately what you have here is you have a massive animal who has legs and bones in his legs like beams of bronze and ribs like bronze cages, just this massive animal. The biggest animal that God has ever produced on the earth, that walks the earth. And Job has seen this animal. It's got a tail like a cedar. You know, you could say, well, maybe an elephant, but an elephant doesn't have a tail like a cedar. It's got a little whippy tail. A tail like a cedar. A cedar is an example of one of the largest trees ever produced, the widest trees. So what we're looking at here is, I originally, when I tried to figure out what kind of animal this is, probably something like a Brachiosaurus. However, recently, in the last couple years, there's a new dinosaur discovered called a Dreadnoughtus. So big that they called it Dreadnoughtus. Fears nothing. Nothing can hurt it. Nothing can hurt it, just like Job said. Job describes this animal, or God shows this animal to Job, and Job has seen this before. It's something he's seen with his own eyes, realizing that there's nothing that you can do to this animal. You can't hurt it. It's too big. You can't put a spear in it, or there's nothing you can do with this animal. You just have to ignore it, is all you can do with this giant animal. But Job has seen this animal. Now, this isn't the only dinosaur that's brought up in the Bible. The second one is even more fascinating. This is Leviathan. We'll pick it up in chapter 41, verse 1. Can you draw out Leviathan with a hook, or snare his tongue with a line which you lower? Can you put a reed through his nose, or pierce his jaw with a hook? So ultimately what you got here is now we're talking about the most fierce animal God has ever produced or created. And this, to me, as I look at the descriptions of Leviathan, go in, this is a much larger passage. But go take a look at Job 41, read the entire thing. To me, this reminds me of a Spinosaurus, but this is a swimming animal. Let's grab a couple other verses real quick. Verse 7, can you fill his skin with harpoons, or his head with fishing spears? Lay your hand on him. Remember the battle. So they've battled this animal before. Never do it again. Indeed, any hope of overcoming him is vain. Shall one not be overwhelmed at the sight of him? No one is so fierce that he would dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand against me? So ultimately, this is a swimming animal. This is an animal that comes out of the water and goes back in the water. It's a swimming animal. Well, everybody's that's seen Jurassic Park 3 knows that the Spinosaurus has got giant hind legs and runs like a fierce land animal. But the reality is they've never discovered an entire Spinosaurus skeleton. They've only found the head and the skull and the rib cage. They've never found the legs. So how massive everything else is, they made some assumptions on the legs. Well, what do you know? Just a few years ago, they discovered an entire skeleton of the Spinosaurus in Morocco, and guess what? It's a swimming animal. One of the most fierce swimming animals that have ever walked the earth, but can also come out of the water as well. Let's continue here in 41. We'll pick it up in 26. Though the sword reaches him, it cannot avail, nor does spear, dart, or javelin. He regards iron as straw and bronze as rotten woods. The arrows cannot make him flee. Sling stones become like stubble to him. Darts are regarded as straw. He laughs at the threat of javelins. His undersides are like sharp potsherds. He spreads pointed marks in the mire. He makes the deep boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. He leaves a shining wake behind him. One would think the deep has white hairs. On the earth there is nothing like him which is made without fear. So what you have here is you have a swimming animal with a spine that as it darts through the water, it just creates a wake that if there's many of them swimming, it looks like white hair. There's so many of them. But yet both these animals only recently got discovered by us in the last couple years. Not even in 1999 or before that. We're talking in 2010 and beyond, both these animals were discovered. If you go to the Museum of Natural History in New York City, they took the Behemoth skeleton, and normally the Brachiosaurus takes up the entryway. There's like a big foyer as you come in, and there's a big Brachiosaurus there, or there used to be. Not anymore. They did Behemoth, and his body takes up that foyer. His tail goes way into the kind of the arena area behind the foyer, And then his head goes out into the entryway. So he's actually now taking up 3 rooms where the Brachiosaurus only took up the 1. Massive animal. Now God is bringing these up to Job because he's reminding him that even though you got this massive animal, that there's nothing you can do about it. It's so big it fears nothing. We named it appropriately, Dreadnoughtus, fears nothing. So you have this massive animal that it is beneath me because I am God. I created this thing, but there's nothing you can do about it. And then he shows them the most fierce animal he created that walks the earth, the most fierce, vicious animal, and there's nothing they could do about it other than run when they see it. But yet both these animals, Job wrote about them. 4,000 years ago to 4,500 years ago, Job saw these animals and it was written about, and now 4,000 to 4,500 years later we're looking at this text reading about these animals that we just now discovered in the last 10 years. We always thought the Spinosaurus was a running animal. Job said it swam, and then as soon as we discover a full skeleton, guess what? It swims. You know, we thought that maybe the biggest thing was a Brachiosaurus, but Job says, no, there's something much bigger than that. And then guess what? We suddenly discover it. So Job tells us that about both these animals. He's seen them both. He's had experiences with both these animals. How is it that he has laid eyes on them and he has told us about them, but yet we just now have made the discoveries with all the science that has gone into studying dinosaurs, but yet just now we have discovered these. I think it's things like this that we have to continue to stay open-minded, because when somebody says, you know, we don't know anything that has happened beyond 4,000-5,000 years ago, but yet scientists talk as if, you know, hundreds of millions of years ago, here's exactly how the earth was. But yet we don't know anything beyond 4,000 years ago. But yet Job did. He saw these animals with his own eyes. And now it's been written about, and 4,000 or 5,000 years later, we're reading about something that he witnessed, but yet we're just now discovering it. It's just things like this. You got to keep your mind open, because, you know, we'll go back to Romans, professing to be wise, they became fools. When people say, well, here's, you know, dinosaurs were 100 million years ago, but yet somehow Job, who lived 4,500 years ago, saw them, kind of makes you think. Hope this video is helping. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about Neanderthal next time. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Put in the comments below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. If you feel called to support our channel through Patreon, that link is also below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so never hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, love guns.